need you to take a big call.
When it comes to women and their impact on the clowning world, many get overlooked. It's unfortunate because women in clowning have been innovating and creating silently behind the scenes in more ways than one for decades. Women have played a large part in influencing not only just traditional clowning, but the theater, makeup and costume design, television and comedy, and interior design and painting, to name a few. In the 80s, a popular style emerged in interior design that was inspired by fantasy themes. So think unicorns, flowing ribbons, skies of clouds next to checkerboard floors. It actually shares a bit of resemblance to some of those weirdcore or dark fantasy AI edits you might see on TikTok now. The aim was to look almost surreal, like it was out of some kind of fantasy book. Think Labyrinth. But one of the biggest players of this fantasy trend were clowns. But not just any clowns. Pierrot. It had to be Pierrot. Pierrot aren't like normal traditional working clowns. They're the heartbroken, foolish lovers of the theater, and their masks, mostly pastels and black and white, provided a type of somber and melancholy beauty to this fantasy setting. They just seemed to fit. And so, Pierrot masks, figurines, lamps, dolls, and even paintings helped define an entire generation of interior design. The clowns that were popular in the 80s were so vastly different than the clowns that were popular in the 70s, because in the 80s I guarantee you that you would definitely find people that collected like really tiny pastel, harlequin, and jester inspired clowns as well as Pierrot. I think this did have to do with the popularity of fantasy at the time, because when people were thinking about clowns and fantasy, they weren't thinking about a clown at a circus, they were thinking about a clown in a courtyard or a clown in an old-fashioned play. But where exactly did this popularity of Pierrot really come from? Well, of course, it was none other than a woman, and her impact on female Pierrot and art is undeniable. In fact, if I were to show you these paintings, I bet you would recognize them. But who exactly was the woman behind these beautiful paintings of these female Pierrot? Well, I think it's time to give this beautiful woman who painted beautiful women with flowers her flowers. Her name is Mira Fujita. A quick Google search of her will show you most of the artwork she is known for. Beautiful female Pierrots, often on pastel backgrounds. But one thing that broke my heart is that I, for the life of me, couldn't find out anything else. I couldn't even find a photo of her face. And I desperately wanted to know more. But it felt like the more I dug, the less I found. How could someone so important be so elusive? Through multiple internet searches in both Japanese and English, I finally found out that there was an art exhibition in Japan that was held for Mira at the Yayoi Museum of Art. Checking their website, I found record of when the exhibition at the museum was held, and it was in 2011. This led me to a blog post from someone in Japan who attended the event and took photos of everything that they bought there. This photo had all different kinds of merchandise, but also included a book or a pamphlet, and I saw this photo and thought, if I could just find this book or pamphlet, maybe I can find some information on Mira. With a photo of what I was looking for, I was able to find out that the book is called Mira Fujita, Japanese Literature in Europe, and this was a book I was able to track down from a Japanese seller on eBay, and so I bought it, hoping so desperately to finally see her face and learn more about her. And when it arrived, it finally paid off. I actually got to see what Mira Fujita actually looks like, and so I wanted to share with you her story. Mira Fujita, also known as Mira Fujita, was born in Kagawa Prefecture. She is the eldest daughter of famous calligrapher Sanyo Fujita, who apprenticed under Harumi Toyomichi, who came from one of the greatest ever houses of calligraphy. Following in his artistic footsteps, Fujita went to Tama Art University in 1948 and specialized in painting. After graduating there, she would go on to Musashino Art University, where she would also study sculpture. This should tip you off at the kind of talent that Mira possesses. She is a great example of the saying from the art world, you have to learn the rules in order to break them. She is a classically artistically trained artist, yes, but she still managed to find her own art style. This style started to emerge when she found her true calling as an artist. In 1953, she was asked to collaborate with the magazine Jogakusei no Tomo, or Friends of Female Students. Mira would begin to illustrate women for the magazine, and she would do so with so much grace and flair that it would inspire Japanese fashion and even shoujo manga, which is something else that I don't think anyone has really pointed out. If you look at Mira's early work, her impact on many different shoujo manga styles is undeniable, especially considering how long her illustrations were showing up in Japan and later on around the world. In 1959, Fujita would travel to Paris to study abroad. Here she would become inspired more than ever before and continue to draw and illustrate the different types of women and movie stars around her, really developing her style. However, in 1962, she would have to travel back home to Japan to take care of her father, who had fallen ill. He would unfortunately die that following spring, and although her trip to France was cut short by tragedy, the way Paris made her feel stayed with her in heart and mind. She was always yearning and hoping to someday make her way back there if she could ever find it in herself to return. But Fujita was an insanely hard worker and would stay busy for 10 years. She would do work for Junior Literature and Cobalt Books as their central painter, but working for two different companies would prove to be extremely hard work, and finally in 1972, the intense pressure of the Japanese workforce was simply too much to endure. Mira realized she needed a break, so she decided to go back to a place she once loved so dearly, Paris, only expecting to be there briefly and send in her work as she needed from France to Japan, back to Cobalt Books and Junior Literature. But once she was actually in France, she realized that she had an immediate relief from being away from Japan's work culture, and she just quit entirely. She says in a way it was like she lost her mind. She just abandoned all of her work responsibilities in Japan, which honestly was a crazy thing to do, especially culturally. But she decided to choose to follow her heart, which proved to be exactly what she needed, and she couldn't have done that without that courage. However, if it wasn't for this hard choice, Mira Fujita wouldn't have the success that she has today.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
If you're interested on how you can help add to clown history and clown culture, please consider checking out my Ko-Fi, where if you subscribe for as low as $3, you can have access to YouTube videos a day early, toy review videos, selfies, and even behind the scenes and art. $3 is a great deal, really. $3 is an amazing deal. $3. Amazing. I don't think it's polite to ask for people to spend money on you in the middle of the video. Buy it now. Mwah.
After 2 years in Paris, Fujita would end up drawing and painting for publishers there, which would give her enough recognition to do more magazine covers of children's picture books and animals. This would eventually catch the eye of Ox Publishing, who was a poster maker. They would commission Mira to make some posters, and Ox Publishing actually asked Fujita if she'd ever consider painting a clown. So, thinking about the inspirations around her, especially in France when it came to clowns, Fujita came up with the now infamous purple clown painting, and it would be an instant hit. Many other companies after this would want more and more clown illustrations from Fujita because they saw the success of the purple clown, so they would start to commission harlequins and Pierrots. These would be sold as posters and on various goods such as stationery and cards. Because of the popularity at the time of Pierrot and pantomime itself making a bit of revival in Europe, especially in pop culture, this combination of the theater and the beautiful and mysterious style in which Fujita painted women proved to be a force of its own. The subtle feminine beauty captivated people all over Paris and Europe and even spread to Asia. Mira's work would also be purchased by both Swedish and Dutch companies. One of the main distributors of Fujita's work would go on to be Ideco, a German subsidiary of a Swedish company that had gone into business with Fujita. Ideco would make many different statuettes and things like umbrellas with her paintings on them, and they would go on to be found in abundance around Europe. There would also be collaborations between Ideco and other brands. For instance, the brand Henri would go on to make many Harlequin statues of Mira's work and would be sold as trinkets and keepsakes for tourists visiting Italy. These items are usually marked as Henri, Italy, designed by Ideco. Many interesting products have been made out of Mira's work, including talcum powder, miniature tea sets for dolls, ornaments, and bedding and throw blankets, and that's just some of the more common stuff that you can find. It would be these exact items and their popularity, along with the posters and statues, that would become an unforeseen hit in the United States, going on to inspire many other creators and imitators. This would go on to influence the interior design trends of the 80s, adding a hint of fantasy, melancholy, and European flair. The beauty of Americans trying to make their home look more European with paintings painted by a Japanese woman is honestly pretty awesome. There are a lot of different trends in the 80s, especially in interior design, but one of them was you saw a lot of people revisiting the 50s, and in the 50s, pastels were a huge thing. And in the 70s, clowning was more associated with children's rooms, bright and primary colors, and like birthday clowns. So I think Pierrot were seen as more sophisticated. And then alongside this pastel trend coming back, Mira's pastel clowns fit perfectly in this gap. Also, alongside of trends like New Wave and a lot of different bright colors and painted white faces, you would also see the emerging of Mardi Gras masks being really popular and being used as decor. So Mira just fit in perfectly with all these different trends, and it's really cool to think about. Unfortunately now, I think we see a huge disconnect in Mira's work because it's just reposted and constantly left uncredited, and part of that is because in the 80s she was basically copied so much to such an extent, I think we lost the plot. I think it's because there's also limited information on Mira's life, and it's even so bad that there isn't even an article about her on Japanese Wikipedia. There's just a place for someone to add one, and that actually showed up when I was looking for information on the magazines that she worked for. She was just mentioned by name, but there was no page for her. It would seem that the woman who had made the mysterious and beautiful paintings ended up becoming both mysterious and beautiful herself. But we wouldn't have any of Mira's work had it not been for her brave choice to quit her demanding jobs in Japan and travel to Paris to paint and draw what she wanted, when she wanted, and it's for that I thank her. When you think about her impact, not only did Mira Fujita become responsible for an entire type of interior design in the 1980s, she also inspired Japanese fashion and shoujo manga all in the same big broad sweep. Mira Fujita, you will always be famous.
This video was actually a present from me to me and my editor, of course. Mira Fujita is actually someone that I'm incredibly inspired by and one of my very favorite artists ever. And she's so important to me as an artist. I'm an artist. Maybe my editor can put some pictures. So I wanted to do something that I was super passionate about. I know that there's not a super huge interest for a project like this, and I'm just really happy that if you made it this far, you learned about her and you learned about her impact on art and interior design. So thank you for watching. I appreciate it. And a big thank you to this book, because none of this video could have been made without this book.
And here are the winners of the Community Meme Challenge. I had a fun time picking these winners, and it was hard to narrow it down, so I decided to pick 3.
Thanks for watching this. Thanks for learning about Mira Fujita, and honestly, you're the best.